It looks like he is.
I wonder if something's wrong with the internet.
Pastor, you can type in the chat feature and let us know what you want us to do. I got a webcam for my computer and mic is not working. Oh. Can you disconnect the webcam and just use your regular, are you on a laptop or a PC? PC.
Haven't you ever heard of a dry run?
He has been doing them every week. It's worked.
Not with the webcam. He hasn't used a webcam. This is the first.
Oh.
Should we have Kellen run over from across the street to help you?
Where's Chris?
I wonder if he authorized audio when he signed on.
Emmer, go ahead and start. Well, okay. This section this week is on financial well-being, financial wellness. And being that I've been in the financial services industry for over 30 years, and I retired the beginning of January of 2020, Pastor Jim and Sandy thought that I might be a good person to handle this part of the lesson. I'm a CFP, a certified financial planner and financial advisor. So it was interesting when I looked at the financial well-being part of the lessons that in the reveal in the Gospels, Jesus talks about money more than almost anything else. And I found that very interesting. I just don't think of money in those terms in the Bible. So, but as we fast forward to today, with everything that we see on television and everything that we hear and learn, some is good and some is not so good. But I've always found in the 30 years that I've been doing this, that at the best and worst of times, you always go back to the basics. In most things, basics do not change. Right and wrong does not change. There can be some caveats along the way, but going back to basics and knowing what you know and building from there is often the most beneficial. So generally, whenever I start out with clients or prospects, I talk about just getting your house in order. And there are some very fundamental things that oftentimes we don't either think about or we put off or think maybe this doesn't apply to me. But there's very, very few people that cannot benefit from just getting their financial house in order. The first thing is having a will. And I'm sure, Ruth, when my son went to Afghanistan, the first thing that the Army had him do was sit down with his wife. At that time, they had no children, but to put together a will and a power of attorney and and make sure his beneficiary designations were up to date and all of those things. I don't know if you found that whenever you were going to do your mission work, did you?
It was already taken care of
Okay.
years before that.
Oh,
And
all
then
right.
I looked at it
Good.
again before I left, just to make sure everything was still updated and correct. And I looked at it again
Good.
when I came back.
Okay, good, good. So that's a good point as well, as we need to review things periodically. Life changes. And so I would say that oftentimes I found different reasons why people don't do a will, never got around to it, don't have the time. Well, if I do one, I'm probably going to die then. All kinds of crazy, excuses for not doing it. But I will say this, if you have things, properties, a home, cars, bank accounts, whatever, if you have people that you care about and love in your life, if you have possessions, if you are supporting someone else, all of those things are absolutely primary reasons why you should have a will. In the state of Pennsylvania, if you die without a will, your estate goes into what's called or your estate is intestate. And in Pennsylvania, what that means is there is no will. So the state of Pennsylvania will decide how to distribute your wealth, how to dispose of your home, how to, take care of your bank accounts. And just because you're married does not automatically say that your spouse will inherit everything, because unless you are a joint owner on everything that you have, and there are some things like retirement accounts that are not allowed to be owned jointly. And of course, you have beneficiary designations for that. But just because you're married does not mean that that spouse automatically inherits everything. It starts with a spouse and then can go to part to children, and even part to siblings if it gets down the road the line that far. So wills are not, a basic will is not terribly expensive. You do not have to have a high-priced lawyer to do anything like that, just a basic family attorney. I think a basic will is maybe $350. And even if that is prohibitive, or there's online documents and things that you can look at, and legalzoom.com and those kinds of things to put something together. But it's imperative that that the will becomes the anchor of your financial planning, of your basic financial wellness. The next thing is to have a power of attorney. And here again, what would happen if you were in a car accident and you're laying in the hospital? Who's going to pay your bills? Who's going to take care of the household? Who's going to get money for you if you need it? Who's making all of those decisions? And again, just because if you are married, that a spouse can not make those decisions. You would have to go to the courthouse and be appointed your spouse's guardian in order to make those kinds of financial decisions or for them. So again, having a power of attorney for one another, or in the case of if you are single, having someone that can carry on your day-to-day living, bills and financial commitments and those kinds of things, a power of attorney can do that. The next thing is a health directive. And again, that is something that if you are incapacitated or end up in the hospital and unable to make decisions yourself, you need someone else appointed that will help, that will make those decisions for you. And today, in this day and age, having, had a couple knee replacements and so on, the first thing that they ask me is, do you have a health directive? So that is a very common thing today when you go in for any type of medical procedure. Does anyone have any questions so far?
I think maybe you can hear me now. Can you hear me now?
Oh,
Yeah?
I can hear you,
Yes.
Jim.
Yes.
Yeah, well, right here where by the mute button, there's an up arrow, and there it says I can switch what microphone I'm using, and I was using the wrong one, so it was a simple fix. That's
Okay,
what the
good.
problem was.
Would you want to jump in here?
Well, no, you go ahead and then I'll wrap up instead of starting. So,
Okay.
but basically, I don't have any of those three things that you've just talked about.
Okay.
So I'm like way behind, right?
Way behind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm
It's
one
just
of
taking care of.
Well, I'm one of those that just felt, well, I'm not going to need it for a while. Why worry about it?
Well, unless you know something the rest of us do not know, that's not going to work for you.
Right.
And that collar is not going to do it.
That won't put it.
In fact, it'll probably choke you.
Well,
But it's just to protect yourself and the ones that you love.
And I've never really thought about it from like a financial management point of view. To me, it was always, well, we don't have anything but the house and whatever. But to see there, it does get to be a lot more involved in that when you really get into it.
It really, truly does. And when you stop and think about, if I were incapacitated in the hospital and unable to do anything for myself, who's going to do it?
Right.
Not even talking about passing away, but who's going to do it? And that brings me to another point, especially I find it most often with husbands and wives, where there is one person who they split the duties of the household. One person does the finances and the other person does whatever they do. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. That was my phone.
Oh, okay. And so again, that's okay to split those duties. But again, if something were to happen, or if you are single, who's going to know what you're doing? In today's world of computers and passwords and online billing and so on, personally for myself, I can relate to this, probably as well as anyone, because my husband does nothing in our household that is concerned with finances. We talk about it and we make decisions together. But if I would ask him, when is the PPL bill due and how do we pay it? He would, well, you take care of that. So, and we have 2 sons. And I thought, my husband and I travel. What if, God forbid, something would happen to the 2 of us together? What would the boys do? So I made a commitment to myself when I retired that I would, write everything down in a book for my boys and my husband, where my passwords are stored, how I pay bills, what's due every month, where to find the will, the health directive, where to find the life insurance, who to contact if we're gone, Social Security, pensions, where our retirement accounts are. I mean, there's a myriad of things that we accumulate during our life or as we live our life. And yet, if something were to happen, look at the lady on the interstate when her and her husband were down in the Carolinas going on a vacation, and someone shot into their car, and she died. What, and they're young. They're not my age. What's the husband, besides grieving uncontrollably, he's unless they're very well prepared, he's going to be lost. He's going to be lost. So these are things that, again, is putting your financial house in order. I oftentimes find, especially with older people or how they were raised, that you don't talk about money. You don't talk about money. Everything's kept, to yourself, and not sharing with your children. And it doesn't mean you have to lay everything out, penny by penny, but they should have a good basic understanding of, if anything happened to you, where to go to get this information. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and
Okay.
your husband and I have something in common in that, I told Marion the bill, the lights are still on and nobody's knocking on the door for money, so I guess she's doing okay.
You sound like my husband.
Well, I go back to when Gary Graham died, and as as much out in the world as he was, Norma would say to me after Gary died, I am not glad that he's gone, but if Gary went first, he would know nothing. She did all of the finances, and stuff. So I remember her saying that. And I'm single and don't really have, I have stuff and I have everything, but I feel that God forbid something would happen to me, like, right away or whatever. I've pretty much got everything in order that I need, that my sisters or whomever would be able, not just have to remember to tell them where it is, but that they would be able
That's
to,
important.
they would be able to pretty much take everything and just run with it, because it's pretty, and thankfully I had somebody like Emmer you can't do this stuff yourself. You really, maybe you can a little bit, but I am not a proponent of doing something, because there's just too many caveats and so forth and so on, that some of it takes a professional.
Well, there's a saying that my friends that are in the business used to say, among ourselves, is that people spend more time and effort on planning a vacation than they do their finances. It's just like Pastor Jim said, life gets in the way, and you just take it as it comes and do what you need to do at the time. But it will make things a lot easier for people that you care about. And it also, by planning, will allow things to go or pass on or be taken care of the way you want them, not letting someone else decide. And to me, that's a blessing that you can give the people that you care about and that you love. Being that this is tax time, this is a great time to look at some of those things, because most of us have all of our crap out, right? To do our tax return, and, things, that notices that we've gotten for, IRAs or whatever it may be. And so I think of any time during the year, around tax time is when most people really have the opportunity and have to take a look at their finances, and that's when they do their taxes. So I think that this is a perfect time of year, since you have a lot of that information pulled out of your, your files and things, for you to have those serious conversations and start to address things that maybe you hadn't done or thought about. Once you have your house in order, if you will, then there's really, one other thing. On your retirement accounts, whether it's an IRA, a Roth, or a traditional, whether it's a pension that you're, accumulating at an employer, or a 401k, or, nonprofit, a 403b, or something like that. It's good always to revisit your beneficiaries at this point, who would inherit those accounts. You cannot put a beneficiary on your home, but you can, leave your home in your will. A lot of times clients would ask me, well, I'll just put my kids on the house, or I'll just put one of the kids on my bank accounts. Not a good idea. Not a good idea, because there have been times when accidents have happened and the children have predeceased the parent. And in that case, the parent can end up paying taxes on their own money, because their child was part owner of that asset. Anything that has the ability to increase in value over time, like a home, like a some sort of stock or bond account, or something like that, it is always better to inherit that than it is to put a joint owner on it, because of taxation and inheritance situations, taxes, and things like that. Does anybody have any questions there?
Yeah, what about, for my mother-in-law, and we knew she was headed for a nursing home and whatnot. And so several years ago, there are 6 kids in my wife's family. They put the home in the ownership of the children, so it wouldn't show on her financial statement when it was time for her to get help for nursing homes and stuff. Is that like a special case, or you say when you're at that point in life?
Is anyone living in the house?
No, they actually sold the house, and then each of us.
Oh,
Well, yeah, it was put in everybody's name. It was that way for a few years, and then the house was sold. So we each got a little bit of money. We each had to pay a little bit of taxes on the money that we got.
Yes.
But then it helped, that was in order so that when it was time for her to go to a nursing home, that didn't show under her assets.
Asset, yes. How long ago was that?
Oh, it's been probably 8 or 9 years at least now.
Okay. It depends on the personal situation. If a person goes into a nursing home without means, then they apply for Medicaid. Right. And Medicaid has I think it's 5-year look back now on people who try to give away or hide assets, so that the government pays. The thing about a house is, if you inherit a house, then you inherit a house at its current value, meaning the children, for instance. So if they inherit the house at its current value, which is established at the time of death, then the children, if they sell the house for that amount, they have no taxation on that sale of the house. If one of the children wants to live in the house, then, you know, that can be addressed. But if you want to, a house has a cost basis. In other words, your cost basis is what the house cost when you lived in it, when you bought it, plus any actual improvements, not maintenance, but actual improvements. If you added a garage or put on an extra bedroom or bathroom or something like that. But all of us have a cost basis whenever we buy a home. So over time, depending, your home should appreciate. So when the owner sells the house, we can shelter up to 250,000 of gain on that house. So if we bought the house for 50,000 and sold it for 200, we would have no taxation.
Okay.
When a child inherits the house, they inherit it at its current value. They have no cost basis, you know, that
Right.
way.
Right.
But if they own part of it, now they inherit that cost basis. So if they sell it at its appreciated value, they're going to have that taxation because they haven't lived in it.
Okay.
It gets a
So,
little, maybe
yeah.
I'm getting into the weeds a little bit too much. But again, that's when certain discussions, and that's good discussions to have with, you know, children as well, is, you know, what their plans are, or if you had of a child that may want your home or something like that.
Well, there again,
Um,
when my mother died, she still owned her house, and so my sister and I each inherited half of that, and my sister bought my half, and then
Okay.
my niece lived there for a while, and then she sold it. But there again, it was just a case of, you know, my sister said, "How about if we do this?" And I said, "Fine, give me whatever's mine," you know. So fortunately, we get along
And
well
that was
enough that, you know, that we were able to do that. So
right. And that works.
good.
The biggest thing is just talking, you know, within your family and talking with your kids, you know, as we get older and want to make some of these life changes. So I think the biggest takeaway from this piece of it is just planning. It's just planning. You're not going to start on a big adventure or a trip or a big vacation or anything without planning. Why would you not plan your life and your finances? Why would you not plan for the unexpected? It's all about protection for you and for the people you love, and about, hey, saving taxes, doing things in the most cost-effective way so that what you've worked hard for and what you've accumulated stays with the people that you love, rather than going to the government, who really isn't a really good fiduciary with that money. You know, they're just really not as concerned with our money as we are. So it is, you know, encompasses that. So once you have your plan, once you have your financial house, you know, relatively in order, then you start looking at, you know, what are your goals? Where am I in my life? What are the things that are important to me? Where do I want to be in Ruth? What are some of those conversations, if you don't mind sharing some, that you had with your son when you were looking to make this change in your life?
Well, my kids have always been very supportive of mission work. whether it was domestic or abroad. And I worked in healthcare for a bazillion years, so they were very well aware of end of life wishes and that kind of thing. My medical power of attorney and financial power of attorneys happened to be my siblings, so that I wouldn't put that pressure on the kids, but I still let the kids know what those end of life decisions would be, so that they know that. And we went through the whole thing with my parents as well. So those kind of things are set. Now, when I talked to my financial advisor from Thrivent, he had pointed out some different things as far as pre-tax versus later on tax type of thing,
Mhm.
and had made
Post-tax,
some
yep.
had made some suggestions on, because of how diversified my portfolio is, had made suggestions on how to rearrange, I guess, things so that
Mhm.
beneficiaries would get the biggest bang for their buck, because of the type of organizations those beneficiaries would be versus my kids.
Okay.
So yeah, I feel pretty confident that those things are in order. It's just a matter of whether my kids can remember one name to go call when I die.
Put it in the book, Ruth. Put it in the book.
Yeah, they'd lose the book. It would have to be in their phone.
Tell me just quickly, some people are intimidated by going to see a financial planner or advisor. Some people think, well, I don't, you need a lot of money to go there. What was your experience?
No, I first got a financial advisor it was through Lutheran Brotherhood back then, when my
Okay.
ex and I lived in New York. And he happened to come
Okay.
to church, and they singled us out as a young couple and said, "Oh, you need to talk to him." And we were young and naive. We were young and naive. Talked to him. Did a lot of financial planning that just benefited a lot, and benefited me particularly once we got separated and became divorced. And so I've just always had really, really good representatives as I transferred, reps as I relocated throughout the
Right.
United States. So, I just really lucked out. And the one that I have here in Pennsylvania has been with me for at least 15 years now, I'd say. At least 15 years. So he knows me well. We keep in contact, even when I'm in Romania, just on a more uh, friendly type basis, not so much just strictly professional. So yeah, I've just been blessed with that. So he
Good.
keeps an eye out on what's going on, and with my kids as well.
Yeah. And I think that's too what I found. Sandy, how about you?
Wake up, Sandy.
Well, when I first went, to be honest with you, I mean, it was the guy that was there before you, and I had no clue what a financial advisor was, so I thought, all right, I'm just gonna go. And I didn't have, a lot. I mean, I was just starting out working, nothing, and I too, I was very guilty. I can't go to a financial planner. They're just gonna laugh me off the planet because I don't have any money. But I think that you have to develop a relationship. Said you have to develop a relationship with that person, and you have to be of a mindset that they have your best interest at heart, and it's not that they are going to I know people sometimes think, oh, financial planner, they have a picture of a Porsche on their refrigerator and this is where their goals are. No. And I mean, I think that it for me, it has been a very good experience, and I feel confident that I'm in a situation where I can be, and I feel good about it.
Good. Pastor Jim, were you going to jump in there?
Well, just to be totally candid, I'm still at that point where I think if I would go to a financial advisor and show them my overall situation, they would say, "Boy, you've been stupid with your money." Uh, and, sort of that, and a little bit of that mindset of, we don't talk about money. That's a private thing. But to say, well, man, over the years, you've really done some stupid things, and so that to be totally candid, that's kind of where I'm at. So,
Well, one of the first things that I would say when clients, new people would come in, didn't know them from anyone. And one of the biggest things is it's a no judgment zone. It's a no judgment zone. Everyone is different, just like what all of you meet in day-to-day life. Everybody is different, and you never know until you look under the covers, right? You have, like Sandy said, she had thoughts about financial planners and, oh, I don't have enough money, and those kinds of things. But a good financial planner will be just as interested in your goals and what you want to accomplish, and it being all about you, not them. It is a good financial advisor, then, like Ruth and Sandy have, will then become as much of a friend or a good acquaintance than they do the business part. Toward the latter years of my practice, my clients would come in and we would spend the first 15, 20 minutes catching up with lives. How are your kids? Do you have any grandkids? Who's going to college? How are they doing? The scholarship, I mean, all of it. It was getting to know them and the people that they love and care about, and taking care of them in their life. Yes, there were times when they did dumb stuff, but I would just give them the look like, yeah, why did you do that? But then we move on and try and adapt and adjust. But there's so many preconceptions, I think, and you only hear about maybe the worst, on television or social media, or, we have these misconceptions. And really, it's just, I guess, a person to help give you a roadmap to your financial life and future, creating that roadmap for you. I can't do what you do. I can't do what Ruth or Sandy does, or Hank or anyone else in their life. I'm good at what I do, but I do not pretend to be good at what anyone else does. Mm-hmm. So a good financial advisor will sit and listen to you and ask about you and what your goals and ambitions and plans and wants, all of those things first and foremost. If that isn't the first 15 to 30 minutes of your visit, then it's thanks but no thanks, and you walk out and try someone else, because it's a relationship and a trust. It's not I'm this and you're that. It's not that at all. Not that way.
And as you're talking, I'm realizing that it's in a way, a very intimate relationship, because you are privy to a lot of things that we don't talk about. Money is something that's very private. And so if, we need to trust someone like you or a financial advisor, because that's a very intimate relationship.
It is. And oftentimes people will say things to me and with their spouse there, but they'll say things to me that they cannot communicate together by themselves. ourselves, because then it turns into an argument or whatever. So and honestly, a good financial advisor is every bit as much a psychologist as they are a money person, because you have to know people, listen to people, realize, I mean, I went through so many classes of traits of people, and what different things that they said really mean, to them. So it's very, very much a relationship. And I've had clients where a husband or a wife, more the wife than the husband, to be honest, would make an appointment with me by theirself and just kind of let it all hang out, and so you get the most out of it when you feel comfortable with that advisor, and when you can feel that you can be open and honest with them about how you feel about things. And really, at the end of the day, it is a much healthier than relationship that you have with your partner, because it's like, well, gee, I didn't know you felt that way, or whatever it is. So it's almost a mental health experience, I think. It can be as well.
One of the things that I love the most about my financial advisors is that they've always made the decision mine. They laid out all the options. They laid out the pros and cons of everything. They didn't try to push me or sway me towards any of the decisions. I have friends that have other financial advisors that once really, really poor experiences once they saw how many assets they had, they just absolutely pushed them, saying, you have to do this. And they did it and regretted it. And then they had to change financial advisors. So that's just one of the things that you can ascertain within your first, well, I could ascertain within the first couple of minutes of just talking to them. But, within that first meeting, for sure, to be able to know that you can establish that trust and that feeling that you'll be able to open up to them and let them know where you stand on everything and what your opinion is on how to invest, for example.
Right. That's a great point. Again, the money I used to open, as we were talking for our first visit with potential clients, the money may have brought you here, but the relationship keeps you here, right? Yeah. The relationship is what keeps you here. And if most people have that inkling that, that maybe that person across the desk is more interested in meeting their financial goals personally for that month than they are in helping you reach your lifetime financial goals, and if it doesn't feel right, then the best thing you can do is which financial advisors, a good one will say, fine, let go home, think about it, talk about it together, and then come back and we'll address any questions, concerns, or whatever you may have. Anytime you get the hard sell, years ago, I had a friend that their insurance guy would come in with a little casket and put it on the coffee table before they started to talk on life insurance. Seriously, a casket. So, that was in the old days, but there's, money drives people in different ways. And, but you do a good financial advisor, like you said, Ruth and Sandy, you will develop that relationship, and it becomes more than just about the money. Okay. Well, I see it's about 10 of 10 or 10 of 11. So, I mean, I could keep going for another, couple hours at least, but I am hopeful that, at least I've given all of you some good information, and hopefully the people that are watching this, one of the things that Sandy and I and Pastor Jim have talked about is I want to try and do some sort of financial classes for the church on a regular basis, whether it's, the very, very young people or, in all walks of life, just to be able to share and give back, what I've done in my life. And also, Pastor Jim, when you counsel young people that are getting married, they need to be counseled about money as well, because money is one of the primary arguments that, young people start to have, and they need to, have good money discussions on the front end before it creates problems on the back end.
Well, and it's interesting.
So with that,
Well, what we
go ahead.
do, it's called a premarital inventory, which is basically a
Okay.
list of communication type questions. And one of the areas is financial. It's a financial, and it's based on, agreements, disagreements, concerns, that kind of stuff. And, some of the questions are, well, I'm concerned that my spouse has too much debt, or, different things. And so that's one of the areas, and often one of the ones that it rates them from either a strength of the relationship or a growth area of the relationship. And the financial
Absolutely.
part is often one of those that's a growth or potential growth area. So that's good to keep in mind. And as you were mentioning, younger people, and I happen to think of yours truly as an older person who hasn't done what they should have done when they were a younger person. So, that includes us as well. So,
Good.
yeah. Well, give a chance if anybody else has any questions or comments for Emmer before I wrap us up. And I got to say, I appreciate the fact that you started with those basics and things that I may not think of as financial planning, end of life issues and that kind of thing, but I hadn't really put in that financial planning kind of category. So it's good to be made aware of that. And like Emmer said, especially, for you folks that are watching, and we do hope to, in the near future, have a series that might start with the very basics and then work through financial well-being in a little more detail so that we have a chance to do that. One of the things that really struck me, especially when you were talking about wills and the state taking over your finances and your situation, and the state not being a very responsible entity to do that, is the idea of stewardship. And Sandy is chair of our stewardship ministry, and I see her, she's nodding her head here. She agrees that, it's just good stewardship to make those plans for your finances to be put to the best use even after you're gone. Rather than, it's basically throwing money out the window if you just, if you go without a will, without a plan, and, that money often goes to waste. The ELCA now has folks that are specifically designated and trained as whatever they call, financial gift planners or whatever, for what happens and how you can give to the church in different ways, even after when you pass away. So that idea of stewardship is one that really struck me as you were talking. But I think it's interesting, the question under the recap section, and just to briefly read the couple verses that they had assigned for today, or suggestion for today. And I sent these out and I printed them for myself from the Message. We've talked a little before about translations and paraphrases of Scripture, the Message being a modern day paraphrase of Scripture. And just the way Eugene Peterson worded it, I think is a little more understandable. The NRSV talks about someone building a tower and those sorts of things. But the Message brings it more into a more modern context. Is there anyone who planning to build a new house doesn't first sit down and figure the cost so they'll know if you can complete it? If you only get the foundation laid and run out of money, you're going to look pretty foolish. Everyone passing by will poke fun at you. He started something he couldn't finish. Or can you imagine a king going into battle against another king without first deciding whether it is possible with his 10,000 troops to face the 20,000 troops of the other? And if he decides he can't, won't he send an emissary and work out a truce? Simply put, if you're not willing to take what is dearest to you, whether plans or people, and kiss it goodbye, you can't be my disciple. I think we need to understand that in that, kissing those things goodbye isn't being foolish. It's not throwing them away. As far as the planning and the considering, it does speak to making the best use of your resources and not being wasteful, not throwing them away. And again, it comes back a lot to stewardship of what we have. But the question under the recap there, how does planning of resources relate to giving up what one has in order to be a disciple? Anybody have anything to say about that? Planning resources relate to giving up what we have. Because
I don't know that it's a giving up if it's just a rearranging. You can, I guess in my case, I look at it, of course, Emmer will tell you that I'm very often one that sits on the edge of something and has to be called back off the ledge because that's just me. But anyway, if you have something that you can make work for somebody else as well as yourself, I don't consider that giving up something that that you don't need or that isn't going to be something beneficial. I would consider that to be something that would be a gift to you or to the church or to whomever, and not have it wouldn't, to me, would not be giving it up or wasting it.
Okay. Part of what I see in that, and again, this kind of strikes me very personally. When Peterson says to take what is dearest to you and kiss it goodbye, I think it's a matter of, to me, money is not a driving force in my life. So to give up, Sandy, you mentioned Gary Graham before, and I remember him telling me that one of the reasons Norma took care of the money was because Gary would give it all away. And that's kind of, maybe I'm not that generous, but that's kind of the situation to me. The accumulation of money really doesn't interest me. But when we talked about embarrassment over how I've done it in the past, we talk about having control over what I do with it in the future. Maybe those are the things that need to be given up. And like Ember says, those preconceived notions we have of people who really want to help us, sometimes we are holding on to things like our embarrassment, our desire for control, those kind of things that keep us from being good stewards, from being the smart, financially well people that we could be. And so the giving up is not necessarily the giving up of the resources, but giving up whatever it is that keeps us from making the best use of those resources. That's, at least in my case, that's kind of the way I see it. Now, for somebody who You know, my wife used to talk about people at the bank that, you know, their whole goal in life was to accumulate $1 million. And once they got it, then they wouldn't even buy a new car because they didn't want to give any of it up. You know, their life was driven by that accumulation of wealth. And so to them, giving up the money might be a bigger deal. But I know personally for me, that's, you know, like I said, the bills are paid, the lights are on, I'm good. So,
I relate it to the parable of the talents. I feel like if the money is just hidden there, like that talent, you spent the energy to, I guess, gain as many talents as you can if you think of the talent as money, but then you bury it, then it's not doing any good. So the whole point is to be able to increase it for the joy of everyone, because you're not going to be there to enjoy it.
right, and I think that's, you know, when Emmer mentioned that it says here Jesus talked so much about money, I think a lot of people don't realize in that parable of the talents, a talent was money. It was an amount of money. It wasn't like a modern day thinking of a talent as a skill or an ability to do something. A talent was an amount of money. And so, you know, that was one of the cases where Jesus talks about that money. So, yeah. So, and yeah, if we're just wasting it or just burying it, it doesn't do a bit of good. So, and we've all probably heard stories about the elderly folks who passed away and had money hidden in the walls and mattresses, and you know, they lived like paupers and had money to throw away. On the other hand, I've seen folks here at the church, and you know, probably the generation before ours, many of them who came through the Depression, who had maybe more training or more incentive to be wise stewards, who lived not like paupers, but lived a very basic life, never extravagant, and passed away and left large amounts of money, not only to the church, but to other organizations and charities and family members. So they lived comfortably. They didn't live extravagantly, but they were able to do a lot of good with what they had whenever they passed away. So again, I think that, you know, we may consider them as having given up big houses, fancy cars, those kinds of things. But for them, those were things they didn't need, and they were able to do better with their money. So it is about time to wrap up. Emmer, thank you again. You did a wonderful job. I look forward
Thank you.
to when we do a little more of this for the congregation, and of course this will be recorded. I hope my camera and microphone and things work on the recording as well as it did here once I got it figured out. And to all of you, we will be back next week. And next week we're talking about vocational well-being. And I have asked Ruth to lead that discussion because she has gone through quite a discernment process over the last couple years. And so maybe she can share some of those thoughts about vocation with us, having had that experience. So we're looking forward to that, Ruth. So again, as we've been doing, I'll close with the simple prayer that's in our study guide, and then we'll sign off until next week. Let's pray. God of abundance, we give you thanks that you have given us all that we have. Send your spirit of peace as we tend our financial well-being. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
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 Thank you all. See you next week.
Have a good one. Happy Easter, everybody.
Happy Easter, Hank, and
Happy
everyone else.
Easter.